Another Dominaria set arrives and brings with it a new card for a beloved character. My first easy deck was with the original Jhoira at the helm. It was so fun to manipulate time, with Jhoira's Timebug, Paradox Haze, Clock Spinning, and cheating either big spells or front load and obliterate along with some huge beater to boot. I liked the second Jhoira too, but she always felt a bit too straightforward, even for someone who loves Storm. For some reason, I find it a good thing that her third iteration somehow feels closer to her original card. Tapping to add two ingenuity counters, a cheat and artifact count into play with CMC equal to the number of counters of Jhoira is just so much value and opens countless possibilities for deck building. So in order to celebrate Jhoira's third card, I present to you the deck I decided to call Jhoira of the Three Paths. It is a singular deck consisting of the basic strategy of Jhoira Ageless Innovator, having lots of artifacts and beaters to stay alive and put pressure on opponents, but with three different and most importantly interchangeable paths to decisively finish the game. What are the three paths, you may ask? Back in the day during the Brothers' War, Urza and Mishra fought each other, bringing devastation to the continent of Tertiaire. Feldon, along with our artificers and magic users, sought neutrality in the conflict and founded the third path as an alternative to the path that the two brothers were following. Therefore, each path I chose for the deck follows to a certain extent what the cards of the three represent. Will she follow the path of Urza or Mishra? Perhaps the one of Feldon is the only way forward. It is up to you to decide. But before we get into further details, let's get back to the basics of the deck. The largest portion of the deck is dedicated to getting as much activations as possible from Jhoira, thus maximizing her value. Affetto Alchemist, Fate Stitcher, Kelpie Guide, and Vizier of Tumbling Sands are untappers that can be used only once in a turn cycle. Corridor Monitor is a single-use untapper too, but has the upside of a potential high roll, where you tap Jhoira to get two counters on her, and put the Monitor, who untaps her, and you can immediately tap her again to put a 4-drop artifact into play. Tide Force Elemental can be activated at least 2 times a turn, but it is important to note that its landfall ability can be procced by the artifact lands that Jhoira can cheat into play, and thus provide even more untaps. Freed from the Reel is usually used in other combos, but here it provides multiple untaps per turn for Jhoira for a fairly cheap price, and additionally works as a comeback mechanism as it can ramp our commander back into the game if she was removed and her counters were lost. The next untappers are artifact based. First off comes a 1000-year elixir, which provides additional value of essentially giving haste not only to Jhoira but to other creatures that we run with an untap ability. Puppet Strings is also here, as well as Mage Right Stone. Lastly, we have the new Patriarch Seal that also doubles as a mana rock. I also decided that Unwinding Clock deserves a spot here, as it can provide multiple untaps per turn cycle for our artifacts, which in turn can provide multiple untaps for Jhoira. Closing this section are 4 artifacts that don't provide untaps per se, but rather can copy Jhoira's ability, sometimes multiple times in a turn. Battle Mage Braces, Illusionist Braces, and Rings of Brineheart can copy a commander's ability for 0, 1, or 2 mana respectively. And Little 4 Engine does the same for 2 mana but has additional upside in its other modes. Tezzeret the Seeker deserves a mention here as well, as he is in Dig mostly for the mana's tutoring ability, but his +1 can also untap up to 2 artifacts. So we have the untaps and the counters on Jhoira, but that alone does nothing if it's not followed by some threats. And there are few things more threatening than dropping a Blast Steel Colossus at the end step before our turn, and just so it doesn't feel lonely, Dark Steel Colossus and Metal Colossus will keep it company. Triplicate Titan and Phyrexian Triniform are huge creatures with great upside when killed. Steel Hellkite is also a solid creature and can act as a removal piece by giving us the option to pay X and destroy each non-land permanent with CMC equal to X that a player controls, who was dealt damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. Memnar can be a nasty threat that can easily steal an opponent's artifacts, or any permanent if we invest enough mana into it. Khan Scion of Urza is a solid planeswalker that can make huge tokens and can also draw us a card if needed. Master Transmuter closes off this section as perhaps the biggest threat among those mentioned. At first glance, all it does is what Jhoira does, cheat big artifacts into play, but there is much more to it. First off, as we already mentioned, the deck runs 18 cards that can untap permanents and copy the activated abilities of permanents. Second, the way Master Transmuter's ability works is like this. You return an artifact card to your hand, and only then you choose what to put back in. More importantly, it can be the same artifact card you've just returned, and when this is combined with solid ETB effects such as Meteor Golem or Spine of Ishsa, things turn very ugly very fast. For interaction I chose the aforementioned Steel Hellkite, Spine of Ishsa, and Meteor Golem along with Ugin the Ineffable for permanent removal, and Counterspell, Negate, and Stoic Rebuttal for spells that interact with the stack. Turn Aside and Keep Safe are technically counterspells too, but I do consider them protection spells for Jhoira or our key permanents. Speaking of protection, it was natural for Swiftfoot Boots to be included. Note that Lightning Greaves is missing as it gives Shroud and would block a major part of our deck strategy. Padim Console of Innovation provides blanket protection for our artifacts, and considering the average CMC, the card draw abilities he provides is almost always active. Darksteel Forge closes this section as a classic card in artifact builds. For card draw along the mentioned Khan Scion of Urza, Padim Console of Innovation and Ugin the Ineffable, I also included beloved cards such as Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora, as well as one with the Machine and the Magic Mirror as a solid card draw that can be cheated with Jhoira. In addition to normal card draw, the deck runs a total of 7 tutors. Trinket Mage, Trophy Mage, and Treasure Mage each search an artifact with a specific mana cost and put it to hand. The classic Fabricate and Inventor Sphere do the same, but can find any artifact we might need. Tezeric the Seeker and Wheel of Invention not only tutor, but directly put the chosen artifact into play, making them a powerful inclusion. Still, sometimes things don't exactly go away and the board has to be wiped clean. For this reason, I chose to give the spotlight to some underplayed cards like Cyclonic Rift, Ugin the Spirit Dragon, and Blasphemous Act. Oblivion Stone can be cheated in with Jhoira and sometimes even allow us to keep some key cards of our own, and Flood of Tears into dropping a huge artifact can certainly make at least one opponent cry. Some form of recursion is good in any deck, so I decided to include Scrap Mastery and Emry, Lurker of the Lock. The mana rocks are the usual suspects: Arcane Signet, Izzet Signet, and Patriarch Seal for colored mana, and Hydron Archive, Sol Ring, Basalt Monolith, and Tran Dynamo as colorless mana producers. I decided that 7 is good enough number, as the majority of the deck revolves around cheating mana, not producing it en masse. Cards of note in the mana base are the Artifact Lands, Darksteel Citadel, Seat of the Synod, Great Furnace, Silver Bluff Bridge, and Treasure Vault. It is important to know that apart from the obvious artifact synergies, Jhoira can put them into play similar to a Walking Atlas if we don't have any other artifacts in hand or the number of her counters aren't high enough. 3 other lands of note are Urza Saga, which can make huge tokens and replace itself with either a Sol Ring or an artifact land, Inventor Sphere, which doubles as a tutor, and Spire of Industry, while the rest of the mana base is the standard for an Izzet deck. And now for the grand finale, as promised, I present to you the 3 paths. First off, the Path of Urza. Since the original card of Urza seems suited for Storm, I decided that his path should go in that direction as well, and therefore include Aetherflux Reservoir, Isochron Scepter, Dramatic Reversal as a way to decisively finish the game, along with Merchant Scroll and solve the equation to increase consistency. Additionally, this build provides huge high roll potential for a turn 3 win. It goes something like this. You play Jhoira on turn 2 and pass the turn. On your next turn, you tap her, adding 2 counters and putting Isochron Scepter on the battlefield, imprinting Dramatic Reversal. Pay 2 mana and activate the Scepter, cast the imprinted spell for free, and untap all non-land permanents. Then tap Jhoira again, add another 2 counters, and drop any 2+ mana producing artifact, say a Sol Ring. Tap Sol Ring and use the 2 mana to activate the Scepter again. Tap Jhoira a third time and drop Aetherflux Reservoir with her ability. Tap Sol Ring to activate Scepter again. Cast the imprinted Dramatic Reversal, gaining in this case 3 life. Repeat this process to gain infinite life and then laser everyone for the win. Second comes the Path of Mishra, and since his card mostly offers itself up to locks and Stax strategies, I chose for him the Stax team. This path utilizes cards like Mana Web to make interaction difficult, and Storage Matrix, which usually hinders our opponents a lot more than us. They are followed by fan favorites Winter Orb and Static Orb to grind the game into a halt, and when that happens it is only natural to play Khan the Great Creator, along with Mycos and Lattice, and permanently lock everything. A thing of note is that this path has 6 cards, so one will have to replace Trinket Mage. And last but not least, the Path of Feldon. Animation. This is definitely the most fun and fair way to end the game with cards like Might of the Machines, Cyberdrive Awakener, Rise and Shine, and Khan Silver Golem, which can all animate artifacts en masse, and if we can get to it, Tezzeret the Seeker's ultimate can do the same. Tezzeret Betrayal Flesh is also here, and although his animation ability is single target, I think that he still fits the team nicely. It should be noted that much of the machines does not play well with artifact lands, and if you think that the risk of killing a few lands outweighs its use, either swap the artifact lands for 4 islands and 1 mountain, or swap much of the machine itself for, say, the Black Staff of Waterdeep, whichever you prefer. Well, this is the deck I came up for Jhoira Ageless Innovator. It was really fun for me to build it, and I hope that it was fun and interesting for you as well. Which path would you choose for your builds? Tell me in the comments below. Cheers!